this morning. Um, I have rented for years, more years than I particularly care to count, partly because I'm self-employed and it's much more difficult for a self-employed person to get a mortgage than it is for someone who receives a W-2 paycheck. Um, you have to have a larger down payment. You have to really prove that you're actually making the money that you say you're making. Um, so I've never bothered to purchase a home. There's also, the idea that if I were to buy a home, since I work from home, anytime I would write off my mortgage amount, which I do, I write off a good chunk of my rent and utilities, I would have to recapture that in capital gains when I sold the home. So I've just never bothered, it's just been not something that I was ready to do. So I've rented from here for years. And I'm really happy here. I have a great neighborhood. There's lots of great kids. My kids have grown up here. I was pregnant with my 16-year-old when I moved into this apartment. And this morning, like yesterday, I called my landlord and said, the dishwasher's out. It won't drain. Would you please come look at it? And he called me back today and said, well, we're getting you a new dishwasher. And by the way, we're selling the units and can you be out by February 1st? So I'm very stressed out because I didn't expect that. I was expecting to move. I was definitely expecting that. I was kind of been dealing with a little bit of sticker shock. I live here very, very cheaply. And it's been very nice that I've been able to live so cheap. But at the same time, I was aware that that's exactly what it was. I was able to live cheap. I've been able to save money. And so it's a little bit of sticker shock going on. So I talked to one of my mentors today. In fact, I talked to a couple of my mentors today. One of my very dear friends, Michael, who personally I think the sun rises and sets on the man. I talked to him about it, and I was just still in shock. That here I had talked about moving, and all of a sudden it has become something that has to be done. And now I'm having to, move forward with it. And I had, just kind of been relaxed, and I've been looking for a place to live outside of this, someplace bigger and nicer, and maybe a house with a yard, and get away from apartment living. I don't like living in apartments. With some space to expand and some place that I could enjoy having business contacts come over, where I'm not just like, oh, don't look at the stained carpet because my landlord has never cleaned anything. Some place where I could, be confident, have a little bit more confidence that the house looks nice and that I would feel good and not be quite so cramped. And so I was telling Michael about this. I said, well, I was expecting to move, but not like this. So the reason I bring this up is not to say, oh, woe is me. This is actually a wonderful thing that is happening to me. I am a very secure long-term tenant. I, pay my rent on time. There's absolutely no reason for me to need to move except that the landlord wants to sell the building, and so he wants all of the tenants out. My neighbors are so frustrated. It's funny. So, with all that said, it was sudden. It was very surprising. And I kind of laughed. A couple of years ago, there is a point to all this. I'm not just rambling. A couple of years ago, I had inherited my parents' Chrysler minivan. They had very graciously given it to me at a time when I just desperately needed a mode of transportation. They decided they wanted an upgrade, and so I got to keep their old van. And it was old when I got it. So I had been, running errands and stuff, and I had been keeping that van together with duct tape and spit and maybe the force. It made the Millennium Falcon look like a high-class resort. It just was, it had been the top of the line when my parents bought it, but it was old. I mean, it just, we kept driving it. It had over 350,000 miles on it. And so I had kind of put it out there, I'm ready to buy a new car. And I'm making enough money to buy a new car. So I'm ready to buy a new car. And I didn't really think anything of it. And I was doing the same thing that I'm doing with housing now. I was looking at cars and, oh, this would be nice. And, oh, that one would be okay. And I guess I could do this. And just, I never actually went for a test drive. I just would kind of look and go, oh, yeah, that would be nice. And I just left it. And so I'm driving down the road one day and I noticed my tire felt kind of weird, so I thought, well, I got out and I looked and went, oh, it's strange. There's nothing seems to be wrong with it, but I will go down and I will put air in it just to make sure. Okay. Now my running joke is that I will always drive my cars till the wheels fall off. Remember that. So I'm driving down to the gas station, which is just about a mile from my house, and all of a sudden I hear a thump and the front end of the van drops and I'm like, oh, what was that? And I look and there goes my wheel. Boink, 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 all the way across the road and into the Vasa Fitness parking lot. I drove it till the wheels came off. And so that was my thing about, okay, I have to buy a car. Within a week I was at a car dealership. And I was test driving the car that I have now, and it was a perfect fit. It was just perfect. The payment was perfect. The car was perfect. I have a 2012 Chevy Cruze now, and I love it. And, my credit has gotten a lot better. The weird things that affect your credit is so weird. It's not just whether or not you make your payments. It's things that you wouldn't think are related. But, everything has gotten better since then, and I was like, oh yeah, that's great, I got a new car. So I've spent the past year or so saying, I've got to move. I really need to move. I need to move. I've got to move. The wheel just came off. I tend to believe that things happen for a reason. I don't always know what the reason is. There's a couple of things I know. I know there's always a way, and there's usually a reason. And I may not know what either one of those are. But those are the things that I do know. So I am currently, suddenly, looking for a home. I'm looking for a home, a house. I went today and looked at some apartments and townhomes that just... I went through them and I thought, did the architect never have a family? Because none of these work. There's no space to do anything but watch TV and eat. And there's just nothing. There's nothing. It's a joke. I don't know why people would live there. But that's just me. I'm not young anymore. I am older. I'm established. I have a house full of furniture, brand new furniture, most of it. Except for this. That's next on my list. I need an office. I need, and I was like, why would anyone want to live here? Because there's no space to entertain. There's no space to do, you have to take a deep breath to drive down the streets. But what all this relates to is how you view setbacks. How do you view abrupt changes in your life? How do you deal with surprises? How do you deal with the unexpected? I always will look on the bright side. I have a real tendency to, the initial shock. I'm still in the initial shock right now. And by the way, the reason my landlord is selling the apartments is he's been diagnosed with cancer, and so he's not going to be able to take care of them anymore. So my first concern was him. My first thing was, well, are you okay? I can always find another place to live. My second thing, though, is a little bit of a shock of, oh, I put this out here, and now I really have to move. So that's been shocking. It's been such a surprise that, oh my gosh, now I have no choice. Now I have to move. So that's kind of the first and second thing. First thing is concern about my landlord. I don't really have any sort of close relationship with him, except that he's been my landlord for years. And he's been very kind to me. They haven't raised my rent very much, and they could have. He's been wonderful, except that they don't come in and do any maintenance. I have the same carpet that I had in here 17 years ago. And so I understand that he needs to unload the place and deal with things. I'm just surprised. So then what do you do with it? Well, I kind of look at it as, you know what? I need a fresh start. This is what I'm looking for. And I sat down with my friend Michael and I said, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a front room that I can use as an office, plus 3 bedrooms, maybe 4. I'm looking for a yard. It doesn't have to be a big yard, but I mean, it's got to be bigger than this. I looked at a house down the street that the deck almost went over into the neighbor's yard. I was like, I don't want that. But I don't need a huge yard. I'm not talking about 20 acres or anything like that. A 1/4 acre would be nice. That may be unrealistic. Even 1/10 of an acre would be great if it's actually yard. Utah is really interesting about these great big houses with this little fringe of yard around it. I don't want a big house. I said, I don't really need that much space. I could use it, but I don't, it's not a requirement for me to have a 5 or 6 bedroom home. But I do want 3 or 4 bedrooms, and I want them to be sizable bedrooms, and I want the bedrooms to be smaller than the living room. In other words, I don't want the living room to be so small that you couldn't even get a bed in it. I want space to entertain, and it may be that I can't find that here. I'm pretty particular about what I'm looking for, and I just kind of looked at it as I could sit down and I could weep and wail and gnash my teeth and just be miserable about, oh my gosh, woe is me, I have to move. And instead, I really am looking at it as a new year, a new start, a fresh slate. I will start off clean. This is a fantastic opportunity for me. So how do you deal with the unexpected? Another example would be when I was married, my now ex-husband would just he would just keep spending money out of our bank account without necessarily noticing that he didn't have the money in there. And it was over stupid things like $1.50 for a drink, which turned out to be a $35 drink. The most expensive soda pop I've ever seen. And he just wouldn't even think about it. He would just swipe his card and he was good, and I would be like, we don't have the money. We don't even have $1. Oh, well, we'll just pull against our line of credit and it'll be fine. Well, finally, the bank closed our account because it had been overdrawn consistently every month. This was 10 years ago. And we had just separated. I got the news, and I ranted and raved for a little while and bawled. And the next morning I got in the shower and I looked at, I remember just standing under the shower and going, you know what? This is a fresh start. This seems like a huge setback, but it really is a fresh start. So, even the things that seem to be tragic, you can always find a silver lining. Even the things that you don't want to have happen could be for your very best good. There's a few things that I would kind of consider exceptions. There's people that I do not ever want to leave my life, and if they do, I will have a very hard time believing it's for my best good. But then there's others that are so toxic I couldn't wait to see them go. Michael's one of the ones that I want him in my life forever. because he's such a wonderful person, and you know, I care really deeply about him, and I would have a very hard time saying, well, this is for the best if he were to leave. But when I left a job that I loved, or a business that I had a lot to do with helping to start, I was able to, you know, it took a while, sometimes it takes a while, to kind of step back and say, you know, I can do better. I can do better. So, just how resilient are you? That's something to kind of think about. It's actually very important in business to be resilient, to be able to kind of roll with the punches, and to be able to not be hard as nails, so to speak. A lot of people think that that's how I am because I don't express emotion in front of people that I don't know or trust. But just to be able to take a step back and say, you know, this kind of is not what I wanted. Yes, I wanted to move, but not because of this. Yes, I wanted to move, but I didn't want to get kicked out in 30 days for nothing I have ever done wrong. There's just, you know, there's some learning experience that I need to have here. One of those experiences may be that I really don't want to rent anymore. That maybe I need to try to figure out how to purchase a home. That would actually be what I would rather do than try to find a rental. Maybe I need to redo my finances so that I can afford a more expensive house than I think that I would like to get into. The kind of home that I want to get into is at least twice what I'm paying now. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It may just mean that I need to sit back and say, you know, I need to adjust some things, and I need to increase my income, or I need to budget my money better. Again, there's no negatives here. The only challenge is that I have a much shortened time frame in which to move. So if you can learn to be resilient, and if you can learn to see, and there's always a silver lining, there's always a lesson to be learned. There's always something that you can pull out of it that you can use to improve things. One of my dear friends posted, oh, you'll find the perfect house, you made this happen. And I laughed and I said, yeah, like the van. She said, you're going to have to be more specific about how you want to manifest this stuff. And I kind of laughed and said, yeah, I do not want to manifest a down payment for my house because my parents passed away. You know, that's not something I want. I love my parents and I want to keep them around for a long time. But I have heard of people who have done that. Oh, I need all this money. And all of a sudden, someone close to them passes away and leaves them with the money. And I've just been, not that way. Not that way. I want to earn it. I don't want anything to happen to parents or friends. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. It was really, and I apologize for this show being so late. I was out looking at homes, and then I was out shopping with my son. He wanted a jacket for Christmas and did not get it, so I did tell him that I would take him shopping for it. And it was just nice to spend some time one-on-one with him, just looking around and spending time with him. He's a good kid. He's a fantastic kid. I tell people all the time, that's not anything I ever did. He came that way. All I've tried to do is keep him that way. So with any luck, I will be moving just as soon as possible. We'll just see what the universe has in store for me, right? Yeah, so in business, it's important to roll with the punches. Find out what you can learn from it. That's pretty much it for tonight. I'm looking forward to talking to you tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to talking to you someplace with an entirely different background soon. So I will talk to you soon, and have a wonderful evening.